Namaskar, Nileshok. This would be part 3 in our series on fixing timeline of Hindu civilization. Specifically, we are looking at the different aspects of logical reasoning skills, and some of the mistakes, blunders that are made by various individuals, researchers, all of us, me included, when we try to look at the evidence, multiple sets of evidence, and logically deduce a conclusion from it. The mistakes can happen. I have said it multiple times that to think properly is actually not easy. Since everyone has to think all the time, people think, oh yeah, I know how to think. No, actually, it's very difficult. So even when we point out these fallacies, it's important to keep in mind that we are doing this with a care. In fact, the objective is to make people aware of these fallacies so that we don't make them at all, like as if in mistake proofing, or the occurrence of these fallacies go down, or we learn to look at them in an objective fashion. So when somebody makes a fallacy, we can separate the person from the fallacy and saying, well, here you made a mistake, or here I made a mistake, but that is not to be associated with that person. In fact, that itself is a fallacy, and we will see examples of that. We already covered 2 sessions. So fixing timeline of Hindu civilization, part 1, part 2, we covered a total of 4 different fallacies. In this case, we will cover 3 additional fallacies. So let's go right there. All right. The 3 fallacies we are going to discuss today are authority fallacy, consensus fallacy, and burden of proof. As I said, don't get stuck on the words. Each of these fallacy is known, or each of these fallacies, whichever you want to think of it, are known by multiple different names. So for a given fallacy, you can have 5 to 10 additional names. The important point is that you understand the principle behind that fallacy. When that fallacy occurs, keep in mind, thinking is not easy. But because we all have to think, there is another challenge. When actually a fallacy is taking place in a discussion or a debate, it may not be recognized, may not be recognized by anyone, may not be recognized by the judges, may not be recognized by the audience, may not be recognized by a person who is creating that fallacy, and may not be recognized even by the opponent. But if our objective is for the search of the truth, even after the fact, if we become aware of it, then we should address it. Whether it is a fallacy that an individual has made, he or she himself or herself should address it. If others notice it, they should address it. Because this is such a challenging task, it's also important to eliminate, the folks who deliberately create nonsense. So just because they're just having a fun, they are not serious about knowing the truth. So we also have to do that. In social media setup, what do we do? If somebody keeps on behaving erratically, idiotically, nonsensically, what do? We just give a warning. But if that person does not hear, then in the social media, we use mute and remove, eliminate, block, whatever that we need to do. In our real life, social life, what do? We tend to avoid that person. We first say it politely. When the person does not even understand that, then we increase the heat, so to say. Try finding different ways, try telling through other people. Something similar occurs here. So it's very important that we take this business of fallacies very seriously. By fallacies, I mean logical thinking. It's very important if you want to understand the truth. It's very important if you want to solve the problems. It's very important if we want to make progress in any area. Okay, this is not limited to the area where I have focused a significant time in the last 30 years. Actually, what I discuss is only one specific area of my research, okay, namely Indian civilization or the antiquity of Indian civilization. And that's where I want to focus on, okay, for specific reasons of mine. But what we are discussing is applicable in everyday life, is applicable in your studies, is applicable in your job, is applicable in everything that you do. Research, if you're, doesn't matter which field you are in, agriculture, technology, it does, medicine, engineering, it does not matter. These principles are very solid principle. Logical reasoning skill is very critical. It's very valued because, as I said, thinking is not easy. Although everyone thinks they know how to think, it's unfortunately the reality is most people do not know how to think logically and draw the right inferences. What is the typical structure that you see? Before we get into the logical fallacy, because when this is not followed, logical fallacy occurs. A typical logical argument structure goes like this. There is a premise one, which is a statement, assertion, or a logical statement, logical argument. Okay. And if it's a statement with evidence, then it's backed by evidence. There is evidence that is provided or evidence that is referred to. So that's what the premises are. There can be multiple premises. Okay. So premise one, premise two. In a typical structure, you'll find premise one, premise two, and conclusion. Okay, that's not to say there are only two premises in a given logical argument, but that's a typical structure you will see, usually sufficient. That doesn't mean that's how it is. So therefore, I just wrote it down: premise one, premise two, premise three, multiple premises if required. And then at the end, there is a conclusion. Now, this can get into a logical fallacy, or it can be just a purely dead wrong, dead false. Then it's not a fallacy per se, it's just dead wrong. Okay, and sometime we will talk of those examples also. But just limiting our scope to logical fallacy right now, it can be wrong for two reasons. Okay, and just let's look at that. One thing we have to ask, is the argument logically sound? And as we go through examples, I will refer to them, not just today, in our whole exercise in this series. By the way, let me also tell you, if somebody is lazily sitting here and saying, oh, okay, yeah, so somehow, explain me all the logical fallacies, or what is to think, how to logically think, or how to think properly. No, nobody owes anything to you. Let me repeat this. Okay. So when somebody is explaining, be grateful. Now, you should not limit yourself to even just listening to this. Okay. Google these days. I mean, internet. Just go type logical fallacies or fallacies, logically thinking, how to think. You're going to find lots of blogs, lots of books, many YouTube videos. There is no dearth of this. The bottom line is we find the best way to know everything about proper thinking, how to think properly, how to think logically, and how to be aware of logical fallacies, how to avoid them in our own work, and how to become expert so that we detect it. And even when we detect it, not just detect and stay calm, but point it out. Each of these things takes efforts, it takes a bas, it takes tapashcharya, it also takes courage to point it out. Okay, don't be lazy. So one of the way that the logical structure may not be correct, and we may not therefore able to draw a correct conclusion, is that the argument itself is logically not sound. So that's the one test we have to do. The second test, now remember, these are two different things. The second test is that, is the conclusion true? So remember, that means something can be logically sound and still may lead to wrong conclusion. Okay. Now, why does this happen? Let's look at some of the reasons. Actually, it's very simple. When we look at the premise, so premise one, premise two, and we can limit to 2 for now, but keep in mind there can be multiple premises before you draw the conclusion, depending on what issue you are discussing. So premise is a proposition upon which argument is based. Okay, it can be simply a logical proposition, or it can be a proposition where it is asserting something, and which means it needs a evidence. If it's a logical proposition, then it needs a logical structure, okay, that is considered valid. The next one, the premise is a proposition from which a conclusion is drawn. So that's how we are going to make use of it. And in a valid argument, okay, that is the conclusion, whenever the premises are true, the conclusion also is true. Conclusion is also true. The opposite of that, in an invalid argument, whenever the premises are false, the conclusion is also false. Now, this applies, what I just said, those 4 bullet points applies to, is the conclusion true or false? But that logically sound thing, it's important that you understand that something could be logically sound, but still the conclusion is false, and that can happen because the premise that is stated may be false. And therefore, just last line is important. Okay, so something could be logically sound, but if the premise is false, then the conclusion is false. Now, another scenario. The premises are, let's say, true. However, if the argument, the logical structure of the argument, the way it is organized, if it's not logically sound, then in spite of all the true premises, you may still draw a wrong conclusion. Okay, that's why it is hard to think. And that's why it is even very difficult to spot a fallacy. All right. And that's why how do we do it? By practicing every time, practicing every day. Now, today, I'm going to discuss 3 fallacies, as I said, and the occasion for that selection of those 3 fallacies came from a conversation that happened today sometime, okay? I mean, you can see there, I just did a copy paste, and it says 1 day ago, and then responses going 10 hours ago and 9 hours ago and so on. So it began with a comment to one of my YouTube videos in this very series, Fixing Timeline of Hindu Civilization Part 1, where I discussed cherry picking fallacy and absolutism fallacy. In that context, this individual, Shivanshu Singh, he wrote in the comment, "Sir," and this was just today, by the way, or say, think of it as last 24 hours. "Sir, as per your dates, Mahabharata happened before Indus Valley civilization and Vedic age. For Indus Valley civilization, he is quoting in parenthesis 2700 BCE, and for Vedic age, he's putting 1000 BCE. Okay, so think of it. So he knows when what I have shown for the Mahabharata timing, okay, 5561 BCE. In fact, that could be just a coincidence. In his what you call the name, or in the YouTube handle, you can say the Shivanshu Singh 5556, not that far from 5561. That could be just coincidence. Anyways, so he's saying Mahabharata happened. So as per my dates, Mahabharata, which is 5561 BC, I'm saying Mahabharata happened long before 2700 BC and 1000 BC. Is that correct? Yes. So he understood my date, meaning he may not have agreed with it, but he understood my date. And he is stating that Indus Valley civilization belongs to 2700 BC and Vedic age belongs to 1000 BCE. Okay, so he says your date Mahabharata happened, and is that as per your date Mahabharata happened before Indus Valley? I mean, even it's not even well formulated question. Okay, sir, as per your dates, Mahabharata happened before Indus Valley civilization and Vedic age. I mean, yeah, did it happen before? That's one way of understanding it. Another one is, like, you are saying it happened before Indus Valley civilization and Vedic age. How come? which is to say, first thing, the question is not formulated well. Let me just mention, and not to pick on Shivanshu Singh, this is also another challenge. Just like how to think properly is a challenge, how to properly even put forward a question is a challenge for a majority. This is something people need to work on. The simple rule of thumb I offer is that think of asking a question. When you want to ask a question, does it begin with what, when, where, how, when, why, who? If it doesn't begin with that, you know what? You're going to usually make a mess out of it. So just like, look at this, sir, as per your dates, Mahabharata happened before Indus Valley civilization and Vedic age. Yes. I mean, actually, I went and gave something different, but because I understood his question, or at least I thought I understood his question, actually, if I were have to just take it literally what he's asking, my answer should have been yes. Mahabharata happened before Indus Valley civilization and Vedic age? My answer is like, it should have been just simply yes. Now, of course, I understood. He's saying like, how come that can happen before Vedic age, especially Indus Valley civilization? Maybe. I mean, he's not saying that. But before Vedic age, how come? I mean, Mahabharata refers to Vedas. Ramayana refers to Vedas. Okay. All right. Because I took it that way, so I responded saying, what is your scientific evidence for Vedic age in 1000 BCE? Now, I could have said the same question about Indus Valley civilization. In fact, it is worth asking, because Indus Valley civilization, somebody just giving a one date as a timestamp is absolutely wrong. Indus Valley civilization, as we understand today in 2023, okay, is at least, okay, going from 7000 BCE to 1800 BCE, the way even it is defined, okay, in academia, okay, and not the bozo academia I'm saying, but in general, in a decent academic setting, even people will be accepting it. I mean, it's not like we are going to look at another fallacy, but the evidence is there. And therefore, if they don't accept it, there is some problem with them, that we have to say, what's wrong with you? I mean, there is evidence in Mehergarh going back to 7000 BC. That's part of Indus Valley civilization. Why are you not accepting it? So my point here is that to claim something Indus Valley civilization and one particular time like 2700 BC is wrong. Actually, it's from 7000 BC to 1800 BC approximately. Again, approximately, so it can go before and it can be considered after. Now, Vedic age, again, when the person is saying 1000 BC, okay, and you see that now, then when I asked the question, he did respond to that. So Vedic age 1000 BC. Now that's, I mean, Indus Valley civilization, did it exist 2700 BC? The answer is yes. Vedic age in 1000 BC. Well, by the logic that somebody is claiming, and I don't know what the logic is, but if it existed 1000 BC, we can say, well, it exists even today. I mean, we still do yajna, we still do home, we still chant Vedic mantras. So Vedic age is now. But if you want to say how far back in the past, I have shown it goes beyond 25,000 years. What to speak of this 1000 BC? So when I read 1000 BC, I sense that, and this is very common, because not just this individual Shivanshu Singh, 5+ generations of Indians, essentially every Indian who is alive today, is practically brainwashed, practically deracinated with all kinds of influences through academia, through different influences, what we read, what we watch, movies, everything. Okay, our researchers, even our so-called dharmic researchers, I'm using the word so-called because when it comes to dating, most of them, 99% plus of them, are a royal disaster. And I'm saying this statement with great caution, with great respect. But 99+% of our so-called dharmic researchers are a disaster, royal disaster when it comes to dating. I ask these questions all the time, and they don't have answer. I ask these questions during the conferences, during the workshops, when I visit universities, when I go around to give lectures in the mandirs, at ashrams and whatnot. Okay. Coming back to our subject. So I asked the question, what is your scientific evidence for Vedic age in 1000 BCE? Because I don't know from what angle he's coming from. Okay. And why did I ask that question? As I said, I could have asked for Indus Valley as well as Vedic age. I asked specifically for Vedic age because between the two, that one is the most drastically wrong claim. Because Indus Valley civilization, somebody saying, did it exist in 2700 BC? We would say yes. But Vedic age in 1000 BC, in the sense of Vedas were composed, if it's taken like that, or Vedas were written, or some of the Vedic literature was occurring in terms of composition, then it's disastrous. It's wrong. Vedic, in terms of the composition, in terms of their existence, is long, long before. I have shown definitely more than 25,000 years ago with evidence. Okay, we'll talk about those authority fallacy and consensus fallacy and burden of proof fallacy. So I'm asking this individual, Shivanshu Singh, what is your scientific evidence for Vedic age in 1000 BC? And look, let's look at his response. He says, it is not my own research. It is not his research. Understood? Vedic age, he says, was from 1500 BCE to 600 BCE. Is what we have been taught since school days. Now, there he is correct that that is what is being taught in our Indian texts. Okay. Now, I have not seen Indian school text in a long time, but that's what people tell me. And I want to assert that that is decisively wrong. That the Vedic age, assuming by Vedic age, they mean the composition. Because if they mean Vedic age, meaning the Vedic practices were followed, then why stop at 600 BC? We can say in 2023 is also a Vedic age. 500 years ago was a Vedic age and 1000 years ago was a Vedic age. So only they're saying from the composition perspective. And therefore, I'm saying it's a disastrous, it's wrong. Okay, there is not even a single piece of evidence to claim that these Vedas, Brahmanas, etc. were composed between 1500 BC and 600 BC. On the other hand, there is empirical, scientific, objectively testable, logical evidence to show that definitely some portions of the Vedas were composed more than 25,000 years ago. We'll leave it at that for simplicity. Then he goes on, it is mentioned across the majority of our history books. He is correct. The point is, whatever is mentioned there, especially 15, referring to Vedic ages 1500 BC to 600 BC, is decisively false. Okay, so what you are reading is a false information. You have to become active and complain about it. But I don't know much. I don't know who this individual is, but he seems to be, just swallowing it, everything, digesting it, and feeling proud about it, possibly. The same goes with Indus Valley civilization as well. Again, that is wrong. I don't know what is being taught, but if somebody is teaching only 2700 BC, then that's wrong. Indus Valley civilization, based on archaeology, purely dirt archaeology evidence, goes from 7000 BC, at least 7000 BC to 1800 BC. So that information is also incorrect. There can be marginal variations. He's saying, well, there can be, but I don't know what he means by marginal. Say 1000 BC goes to 1200 BC. Yeah, we can consider that marginal. 1500 BC, like he said there. He said 1000 there. He's saying 1500. So maybe he thinks 500 BC. Yeah, that can be considered marginal. 2700 BC, and I am saying based on a dirt archaeology evidence, the evidence goes back to 7000 BC. So that's like what? 4000 years before 2700 BC. That cannot be considered marginal. So he's not very sharp student of history. I don't know his background, what he's studying, etc. There can be marginal variation, but these dates have been agreed upon by many historians. Okay, now that's the consensus. So why should we accept this? Or in his mind, hey, they can be trusted because they have been accepted by many historians. Okay, right here we are getting fallacy. Remember, three fallacies we are going to discuss: burden of proof, who has the burden of proof or burden of proof fallacy, authority fallacy, and consensus fallacy. Here we have at the bottom the reference to that consensus fallacy. And in the middle, like that, it is in our textbooks, it is in our history books. That is how we have been taught in school days. So, hey, why would somebody taught me wrong information? That happens all the time. It is your responsibility. If you are in the search of a truth, satyana labhyastapasa yesha atma samyak jnanena brahmacharya nityam. It is your responsibility to do the required tapasya, do the required compensation, study, abhyasa, tapascharya, everything to know what is right, what is truthful information, what is false information, separating the two. Okay. But when I say you, I don't mean Shivanshu Singh alone, but he's also included. Okay. And so there you see the authority fallacy. Hey, it's in history books. It's taught in schools. So that's like bringing the authority of history books, bringing the authority of school text curriculum. So that's the authority fallacy, a type of authority fallacy. And the last line, what you are saying, is a consensus fallacy. It, again, all of these go by different names. Okay, let's go. Next one. So this conversation continues. Now, 4 hours ago, when I just copied this today, so I responded to him. I'm saying, Shivanshu saying, what you are referring to are known as authority fallacy and consensus fallacy. Remember the response that I just read. It's in the history books, it's in the textbook, it's in the school curriculum. And hey, these are based on many historians agreeing to it. Therefore, that must be true, or therefore you should accept it. Why are you questioning it? I mean, he's not asking direct question, but that's the tone of it. And therefore, I'm saying what you are referring to, Shivanshu, saying are known as authority fallacy and consensus fallacy. Then I suggested to him, say, go back to my question, the question I had asked, based on what empirical, scientific, objectively testable, logical evidence was he proposing 1000 BC and 2700 BC, 1000 BC for Vedic age, 2700 BCE for Indus Valley civilization, even by including margin of error. What was that evidence? Or the people who were, or the textbooks or the history books or those historians who were agreeing on, yeah, they may agree to something, but based on what evidence they were agreeing. That is what my question is. So I said, go back to my question and find out how they as in the school curriculum, textbooks, history books, and historians agreeing to a certain time period, how they arrived at these estimates. And then I wrote, because I have studied this, to see the contrast. Now, I don't know exactly which textbook he was referring to or which specific historians he was referring to. You will see that in the next conversation here. So this is written before he wrote the next response. But I said, okay, so to see the read my books. When did the Mahabharata war happen? The historic Ram, also known as 12,209 BC, Bhishma Nirvan, or Jivan Rao's Yuganta. Okay. And of course, I'm just referring to my small research group, I can say, and whoever has written a book, but this extends to all other books. Okay. Go and read different books related to the subject. So in this case, this subject, somebody may want to read Anil Narayanan's books. Okay. Because he looks into the antiquity of Indian astronomy, which is relates to Indian civilization and so on. To see the contrast, I suggested to Shivanshu Singh, read my books and watch my videos to see how, or watch my videos, because sometimes people are, very lazy to read books, and say, watch my videos to see how I arrived at my claims. Some people think I'm doing this so that I can sell books. Well, let me mention that I do not take what you call royalty, from any of my books. But that's besides the point. If you want to know the knowledge, damn it, buy a book if that's a subject of your interest and you are interested in my research. If you are not, you don't have to. But therefore, as an alternate option, at least for the starters, I said, well, you don't have to get the book, just start watching the videos. And if it's further interesting to you, then you may consider books. There are 500 plus blog articles I have written, they are just there. Okay. And there are many ways to get the books from libraries. My books are there in all IIT libraries, all IIM libraries, many other colleges, schools in India. They are also now getting into here in the public libraries in America, also in the university libraries and so on. They have their own process. I do not follow any of it. So don't ask me which library, if certain library has it or not. I don't know. Okay. Go and request that library to hold my books. Anyways, so therefore I said, watch my videos to see how I arrived at my claims. Then you will see the difference between these two. Okay. And why I'm calling these claims of 2700 BC for Indus Valley civilization, or 1000 BC for Vedic age as authority fallacies, consensus fallacies, and so on. He responded, he said, okay, to me, with due respect to you and your work, what you are referring to, so my response there is my arrogance fallacy. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of fallacies, guys. Okay. So it's very hard to keep track of. So actually, after, when I read that, I actually went and typed. I said, well, hey, maybe there is one and I'm not aware. I didn't think there was one, but who knows? Besides, the same fallacy can go by different names. I'll tell you where it comes from. Actually, when we talk fallacies, we'll talk about it. But arrogant, there is no arrogance fallacies. At least I couldn't find it in a Google search, let's say. But now that I understand what he's referring to, I can call this basically the fallacy that he's doing in his second message, that is called arrogance fallacy. There is a concept like that, okay? And if we get time in future sessions, we will consider such fallacies. Arrogance fallacy. So he's thinking I'm committing fallacy, but that's not a fallacy. Therefore, what he's calling arrogance fallacy is a fallacy. Therefore, it's called arrogance fallacy. But I'll not make it complicated. I'll tell you where his mistake is coming from. Anyways, so of course you can just say that he's riled up, maybe a little bit. He's upset, angry, whatever these various emotions are there. You have to read between the lines to see them, and that's natural, right? Because he is under certain assumption. Hey, Vedic age in 1000 and Indus Valley civilization 2700 BC, and naturally Mahabharata has to be after. And you are saying what? Mahabharata in 5561 BC. Now, to be fair, see, not fair to him, I'm saying in a discussion or just to save my time, what I could have done is simply said, and I do that by the way, and depending on what I read that time, the time of the day, mood, whatever. But when I read this, I could, as I said, I could have simply said, yes, sir, as per your dates, Mahabharata happened before Indus Valley civilization and Vedic age. And I should have said yes, in 5561 BCE. And probably the issue could have been stopped there. I don't know that, but now that we have already gone through it, we don't know, how it would have gone, that we call path dependent discussion. Okay, let's go ahead. So no, this is not arrogance fallacy, but look at my, and there is a proof is in the pudding. What I ask, why I ask, I'm explaining it, but the person, see, for example, right here, when somebody has listened to my YouTube talk in this series on the cherry picking and absolutism fallacy, somebody asking, and I'm now reading it, my assumption is that the person is reasonably intelligent. The person is reasonably aware. The person has a reasonable background knowledge. So therefore, I'm justified in trying to read between the lines. Now, of course, he can come back and he'll say he's not going to come back, he said. But I say he can come back and say, no. Or when I ask him this question, what is your scientific evidence for Vedic age in 1000 BC? He could have said, no, Nilesh, that's not what I'm asking. I simply saying, are you saying that Mahabharata happened before 2700 BC and 1000 BC? And I would have said, yes, 5561 BC, no ifs, no buts. But that's not what he asked either. So he's in agreement that I understood his question correct and my counter question was equally valid. So therefore, he goes on now and explaining how he arrived at that. And what is his evidence? There is no evidence. It's in the textbook. It's in the history books. So that's authority fallacy. And all the historians, or good number of historians, or many historians agree with it. That's a consensus fallacy. Now somebody will ask, come on, so are you saying that every time you have some question, it's my responsibility, meaning in this case, Shivanshu's responsibility to show all the evidence and open up? No, not at all. That's why the books are written. Okay, and I'll show you our correspondence there. Just like, is it my responsibility when somebody says, so Nilesh, explain me, how did you arrive at 5561 BCE? And I said, well, read my book. When did the Mahabharata war happen? Bhishma Nirvan. Read my 500 blog articles. Watch my 1,000 plus videos. And the person said, no, I don't have a time. Then, hey, get lost. Don't read. Are you desirous of truly knowing the knowledge or truly understanding what I have done? Then you have to do it. The whole idea of writing a book, the whole idea of creating the videos, and the whole idea of writing blog articles is to avoid answering individuals. Okay? Every time, multiple times, the same thing. That's why the books are written. That's why the blog articles are written. And that's why the YouTube videos are created. Okay? Of course, he's not saying that, but I'm just saying many people do that. So I'm taking this opportunity. Okay, so let's go. So when I ask that question, he says, well, with due respect to you, I don't know what kind of respect is that and to my work, but hey, the respect, at least in the sense that he watched my YouTube video, and based on that, he felt like asking a question, and I welcome that. Okay, I admire that. I welcome that. Okay, so what you are referring to is your arrogance fallacy. I said, no, it's actually arrogance fallacy, but we'll not go into that because that will be a new discussion because I haven't heard of arrogance fallacy before. Okay, it comes in a different forms and I'll talk about it. Okay, when the arrogance fallacy comes in a different form, not arrogance fallacy. Okay, right. Because if somebody is arrogant from a Niti Shastra perspective, from a decency perspective, from a culture perspective, okay, cultural norms perspective, from what? From a dharmic perspective, from a jnani perspective, abhayam sattva samshuddhir jnana yoga vyastiti danam damasya karmasya swadhyaya. So from that perspective, okay, humbleness, amanita, namratvam, okay, from that perspective, being arrogant is wrong. Okay, now, just because I said, guys, I'm not admitting that I was arrogant anywhere in this particular interaction. I'm saying just being arrogant as such can be considered wrong from a Niti point of view, Niti Shastra point of view. But just because somebody is arrogant, assuming somebody is arrogant, we cannot say, therefore, he or she is wrong. Because somebody can be arrogant, which we may rebuke, saying, come on, don't be like that. Or why are you showing arrogance? But somebody can be arrogant and somebody can be still right. Okay, because we are talking, see, remember, that's how we have to separate the individual from the argument, from the evidence, from the logic of it, because something can be logical but still wrong because the premise is wrong. Sometimes the premises could be right and still the structure of the logical argument is wrong, and therefore the conclusion is wrong. The person can be arrogant and still he or she can be right. The person can be very humble, real in reality, or pretentious, and he can be right or wrong. So we should not confuse this matter. Therefore, I'm saying the arrogance fallacy we can talk about a little bit, but let's go further. He says, Shivanshu Singh says, whenever new research is introduced, it is subject to questions and queries of common readers. That is correct. This statement is correct. Whenever new research is introduced, such as he's referring to my research, it is subject to questions and queries of common readers. Why common readers? Of course, common readers will have queries and questions, but researchers, experts, academics, okay, dharmic leaders, they all should have questions. That's a welcome thing. It's a desired thing. So I'm not objecting to his asking a question there. What one should ideally do, he's saying what I should have done, ideally do, is to answer those queries with appropriate facts instead of bragging out arrogantly. Now there he is wrong. The first part is correct. What one should ideally do is answer those queries. That is correct, with appropriate facts. Yes. How have I done that? I have done this through 3 books. When did the Mahabharata war happen? The Historic Ram and Bhishma Nirvan. 500 plus blog articles and thousands of videos where I have participated in workshops, conferences, YouTube platforms, television platforms, conferences, I must be forgetting something. Workshop, I already said. Teaching courses, summer workshops, giving lectures in mandir, giving lectures in universities, giving lectures in colleges, giving lectures in social setup, social gatherings, social organizations, you name it. Okay, I mean, I can go on and on. That's how I've done it. But where should somebody start? Well, start with a book. Somebody says, I don't read. Well, tough luck, get lost. But maybe read, oh, I don't want to buy. Okay, fine. Start with blog articles. Oh, I don't understand them. Well, watch the videos. Oh, I don't have a time. Get lost. Again, if you go through these all questions at the end, before a stop sign, it might come, okay, so go read a book, go read blog article, go watch a video, get lost, some of this. There is no arrogance here in even saying get lost. And of course, I did not tell him. I engaged him, frankly. Now, when you say it, you say, okay, did I waste my time? Actually, I wasted my time. Now, I will repeat, if taken as an education and an education opportunity, okay, teachable point of view, then this is a great opportunity. So I thought I will take it and discuss 3 fallacies. Because when something is discussed through the actual example, people may learn, understand it better. So he says, what one should ideally do is to answer these queries with appropriate facts, agree, which I have done through books, through thousands of videos and blog articles. He says, instead of bragging out arrogantly, I do not see here, guys, and I would encourage all of you to write in the comments to this video where exactly I bragged and what did I brag and where do you see my arrogance. Now, I'm just bringing this subject, okay, because this is not limited to Shivanshu Singh. This is happening in social media all the time. This happens in conferences. This happens when I go different places giving lectures. All my trolls are busy 24/7, dancing around my name and dancing around my works, which is kind of fun. That is my bragging, by the way, there. Okay, I don't think Shivanshu Singh is referring to that bragging. And where is the arrogance? But I'm not worried about the arrogance. Okay, absolutely. I mean, the sampradaya that I belong to is Warkari Sampradaya. And one of the great gurus of Warkari Sampradaya is Sant Tukaram. And he says, Bhale teri Devu, kasechi langoti, nathal mathi hanu kati. Ami Vishnudasa menavni mahu, kathina vajrasu bhedu aise. Okay. I'll not go into the translation of that Marathi, but you can see the extreme forms of the individual, okay, depending on the situation. To a right person, you can be very number, but to an idiot, okay, you have to behave in such a way that he or she gets the message. But none of this was actually taking place here, okay. But Shivanshu Singh, basically, there is a Nassim Taleb talks, those who offend easy offend early. Now, that doesn't mean I have to offend somebody. No, those who offend, those who have a nature to get offended easily, they get offended early. And that is what is happening to Shivanshu Singh here. Okay, so he just goes into, I'm bragging and I'm arrogant. Okay, now this is what sometime we will talk about this, that arrogance fallacy. It is a distraction fallacy. Okay, to move away from the issue. We will see why when that happens. Okay, just like you, he said, just like you, I would like to suggest, meaning just like me, I, meaning Shivanshu Singh, would like to suggest me to read a few books on ancient Indian history and carbon dating. Yeah, that's a fair suggestion. So here he's making assumption that very likely I have not read any books on any books on ancient Indian history, or not important books on ancient Indian history. And it appears to him that I don't know sufficient information about carbon dating. Okay, so dating techniques in general, possibly referring back to that 2700 BC and 1000 BCE. Okay, all right. So what can I say? Let's go to the next one. Well, I mean, so the carbon dating, what is it that is carbon dated to 2700 BC related to Indus Valley civilization? Yes, there are pieces, there are objects dated around that time. Guess what? There are objects that are dated about 1000 years after 2700 BC, which are still considered part of in Indus Valley civilization. And there are objects which are dated more than 4000 years before 2700 BC using carbon dating or dating techniques of kind. And that is also considered part of Indus Valley civilization. Okay, and this is the knowledge I'm giving him. It appears, at least based on what he said, he is not aware that the Indus Valley civilization, it appears anyways, he may be aware, but it appears that the Indus Valley civilization doesn't, that goes from 7000 BC to 1800 BC. The reason I'm saying it appears he did not know or he does not know, because if it was, and 7000 BC, Mehergad and all that, Rakhi Gadi and all the evidence he had known, he wouldn't have said, I am dating Mahabharata. My date of Mahabharata is before Indus Valley civilization, because it is right in the middle of Indus Valley civilization or early part of Indus Valley civilization, but definitely not before. So therefore, his knowledge is defective. Okay, he doesn't know what he's claiming. Okay, and let's talk about the Vedic age also. Vedic age, how was it dated based on any kind of carbon dating technique? The answer is zero. There is not even a single object that is carbon dated and then used to decide the timing of Vedas. But what I mean is timing of Vedas pointing to 1000 BC. For example, when I said the Vedas, certain portions of Vedas are definitely more than 25,000 years ago, I'm referring to dating of various kinds. I'm referring to carbon dating. I'm referring to thermoluminescence dating. I'm referring to different kind of erosion models. I'm referring to different kind of sedimentology models. I'm referring to hydrology. Again, somehow it will end up coming to the dating, okay? But hydrology, geology, geophysics, geochemistry, climatology, which is what? Dated using, the oxygen isotope, the nitrogen isotope, or with the crystals, it's like a lead uranium type of crystals, okay, that are brought from the Himalayas, and the dating of those crystals, sometimes using thermoluminescence, other times based on their shapes and how far downstream they were found, and many, many things. Okay, so yeah, I mean, his suggestion, guess what? When it comes to the knowledge and ignorance, this is what we know. While we can claim, or all of us differ in little bit with what we know, when it comes to ultimate ignorance, we are all equal. So his suggestion to me that I should read a few books on ancient Indian history and carbon dating is not wrong. I mean, I have not read every single book on ancient Indian history. Actually, I feel there is no need to read every single book, but there is definitely a need to read lots of books on ancient Indian history. And then not just read and just collect the garbage, but actually learn how to think properly, actually learn scientific acumen, vijnana buddhi, actually learn logical reasoning skills to separate the grains from the chaff. That unfortunately Shivanshu Singh has not done yet. Okay, and that's why this discussion is happening. So he said, because when I said to see the contrast, read my books and watch my videos, he's saying, okay, hold on. You are asking me to read books and watch videos. He has watched the video, it seems here. Let's assume that he has watched the video. We don't know for sure, but he's making a comment at the bottom of a video, my video. So I would assume that he has watched at least this video. I don't know if he has read the book. So he said, hey, just like you, I would like to suggest you to read a few books on ancient Indian history and carbon dating. And yeah, definitely. I mean, people should read more. Not everything, that is just impossible by definition, but people should read more. I also would suggest they should not read just to accumulate information, but learn scientific acumen, vijnana buddhi, learn logical reasoning skills, tarka shastra, Tantra Yukti also learn, yeah, as he suggested, definitely knowing more about carbon dating is very important. Because again, people have made a god out of carbon dating. Many people don't understand how carbon dating works. And by that, I don't mean the technical way of how to date it. No, once a carbon dated information comes out, how to use that information to draw the proper conclusion, which is premise 1, premise 2, premise 3, and conclusion. There, the whole dirt archaeology experts are known to be disastrous, especially in the Indian context, but many times in the world context, in drawing the proper inferences. In fact, I'll tell you, I have to truly meet, and there may be a few exceptions, so guys, don't get me wrong, maybe less than 5 exceptions, across the entire archaeology community of India, and even I dare say the world, where I have met some very sharp, very intelligent archaeologists who have drawn right conclusions and even have the guts to come out and speak. Because I know few one-on-one they will agree, but they may have like the PhDs and they may be professors and God knows what not, but they have no guts to go stand on the podium and talk about what they may agree with me in a private conversation. Okay, so the courage is also lacking. But back to Shivanshu saying, so his suggestion is fine. So our conversation continues. So far we talked about authority fallacy, consensus fallacy, and Shivanshu Singh introduced something called arrogance fallacy, which I'm not aware of it, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about arrogance fallacy in a minute. But before that, let's go to what else is there. Okay. So what he is doing, for example, you can call it a distraction of a kind. It can go under different names. You see everything that I have written here. Okay, it can fall under authority fallacy. It can fall under appeal to emotion. So it's like, for example, we are discussing now. It appears like Shivanshu Singh doesn't have a valid argument to counter me, so he's saying you are arrogant. Okay, that's appeal to emotion. So because you are arrogant, you are just talking something in not sensible stuff. Okay, nonsensible stuff. Or because you are arrogant, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Because you are arrogant, your answer is not correct. It can get into that appeal to motive. Hey, you are answering like this because you are arrogant. You should have taken time and explain all the evidence to me instead of just asking me to read the books. Okay, that's appeal to motive, but you are arrogant. Therefore, instead of answering those questions, you are asking me to read the books. See, this can get into anyone. I'm not saying Shivanshu Singh has necessarily meant all of this. No. So it falls into that association fallacy, for example, as an extremely broad bucket that falls under hasty generalization, red herring, which is a distraction, changing the goalpost, which is to say, so what? I'm not arrogant there, but suppose somebody feels, and justifiably so, let's say, I'm arrogant, so what? Is there anything wrong in what I'm asking? Is there anything wrong in my argument? That's where people should focus. So appeal to authority, this can fall into appeal to emotion, appeal to motive. I just gave you a couple of examples. Character assassination, I mean, not really, but here he's saying, okay, you are arrogant. So the people who are following this conversation on the YouTube comments, they're going to say, oh yeah, but yeah, Nilesh was arrogant there. So yeah, why would he be arrogant? Hey, you stupid. Nilesh is not arrogant. Shivanshu Singh thinks Nilesh is arrogant. Okay, go read through the correspondence to see if there is anything for any ground for thinking Nilesh is arrogant. But my point is, there is no ground there. But suppose, just suppose, hypothetically speaking, if there was, so bloody what? Go focus on the arguments. We have to learn to take away the emotion. This is what all these fallacies are. Fallacies to emotion, fallacies to appeal to emotion, appeal to motive, and just goes on and on. Hey, you are wrong, gaslighting, and I'll see these how many fallacies exist. Okay, more under the same umbrella. Red herring, distract the person, see if that you can get that other person angry. Okay, that can be a strategy when the individual is failing. Okay, appeal to emotion, we saw that there. Negative campaigning, poisoning the well, distraction of the subject, therefore red herring, and just on and on and on. Okay, smear campaign, straw man. Hey, you are arrogant, therefore I don't want to talk to you. Actually, you'll see that happening in just a second here. So that's that arrogance fallacy. That's what these fallacies are. Okay, you are arrogant. Okay, don't talk to me loudly. Actually, see these videos get longer, but these are all worth discussing. There was this one troll, a troll of mine. Okay, I mean, again, this is not like calling arrogant. He's troll in my context. This is not to take away some good work that possibly he is doing in other areas. But when he gets into critiquing my work, he just goes berserk. He gets unsettled. Okay. The mental diarrhea begins, intellectual diarrhea begins. I'm suspecting a physical diarrhea begins. Okay. I'm saying this sarcastically and humorously, by the way, so that people don't misunderstand. And so what that person will say will be like this. Okay. The kind of, okay, I'm arrogant. Okay, I will not respond to that person. Now, recently, I don't know how long ago, a few months ago, I responded to utterly nonsensical argument that he has made. With evidence, I showed why it is a foolish argument, why it is a false argument. When somebody took that video and shared with this individual, who until now was saying that he is very happy, he will be very happy if I, Nilesh, responds to whatever critique he has written or given in the video, I don't know, or written. When I did it and showed how it was decisively false, whatever he was claiming, how it was wrong, okay, how it was presumptuous and so on and so forth, guess what? He said, I don't need to watch that video. We will talk about that also, by the way. That comes under something in Nyaya Darshana known as a Nigrahasthana. Okay, the point of defeat. The person is not going to come and say, hey, you defeated me, but the person is accepting the defeat. Okay. In fact, when just like here, suppose there were judges and they look through this previous argument. And so here when Shivanshu Singh says arrogance fallacy, okay, now this is not a live conversation. I would just say, what portion of my conversation you found arrogant? Okay, I could have asked that. And if he couldn't come up with the logic to that with the judges and the audience, then he would have to say, my apologies, and then we move on. But if I'm not willing to accept his apologies, then that is his defeat. Okay, just keep that in mind. Or he not accepting a false charge, making a false charge such as arrogance fallacy, even after discussion, even after I bring it to his attention or somebody else brings it to his attention, even a discussion, because there can be an error of judgment, on any side. So we have to give everyone a benefit of doubt. But even after that, he doesn't, and there is no sufficient ground, and he couldn't show with the evidence, then that is also considered a point of defeat, nigrahasthana, that he has lost the debate. Therefore, he took this digression of calling me arrogant. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so what are these different things that we have to look at? Okay, so pramana, prameya, samshaya, prayojana, drishtanta, siddhanta, avayava, tarka, nirnaya, vada, jalpa, vitanda, hetva, bhasa, chala, jati, nigrahasthana. These are the 16 elements that one has to build mastery. If you have to think properly, if you have to find errors in your thinking as well as thinking of others, in their logical arguments, in their scientific arguments, in their empirical arguments, and so on. Just out of these 16 elements, one of the words that we are discussing through this series is hetva bhasa, which is a fallacy, simply translated. And what is a fallacy? Well, a logical fallacy is an argument that may sound convincing or true. Remember, you see that two things, but is flawed. And I will not repeat, it can be flawed for different reasons, because it's not logically sound, or the premises used are not true. Okay, or both. It can be flawed for that reason. All right. So that's what we are looking at. Now let's see. Okay, so the conversation continues. So I responded to Shivanshu Singh. I said, Namaskar. After he suggested, you read that before, right? Okay, I'll not go back. You can pause the video and go back if you have forgotten. So I responded to him. He says, do you have a few recommended books in mind? Please suggest. And then he has suggested that I should read books. Therefore, that first question. Second, he said I should learn about carbon dating. Now, see, everyone is not expert in everything. As my luck would have it, the carbon dating is something that, not just carbon dating, by the way, dating in general, material analysis in general, finding the constituents of the material, but finding the age of the material. Okay. And that's how it gets into dating. Or there are some other aspects, but dating in general. Uh, by luck, I happen to be in that area where I have worked for a very long time, actually, close to 30 years now, 25 plus years. So I wrote to him. I said, I'm reasonably familiar with most of the dating methods. Methods, it should be. I just forgot that S there. By the way, on that point, I'll say, while typing on a social media, and especially if I'm typing on a phone, the autocorrect creates problems, but also the thick fingers, they create problems. Sometimes they press the wrong button, and so uh, one should try their best to use the proper spelling and proper grammar, but hey, there is always a challenge. Anyways, for many years, I wrote to him. I have done consulting in material analysis, AMS. Those who know, great. If not, I can give you a long form, but that's not important. IR, and many such techniques. And I have said, I have consulted in this, not just know about them. I have done consulting in this and trained, mentored research scientists with PhDs, sometimes multiple PhDs at multinational companies around the world. Okay. Now, is this a boast? Is this a bragging? Is this arrogance? No, I'm simply, yeah, it can be taken like this, and rightfully so. But my point is, I'm simply trying to answer the person's suggestion to me to read on carbon dating. So I said, hey, on the history, ancient, did he say Indian history? Let me see. It doesn't matter. Ancient Indian history, right? So I said, hey, suggest me books. Maybe he has specific books in mind that I may not have read. And when it comes to carbon dating or dating in general, I said, hey, I'm pretty sound there. If you think the way I responded to him is because of my lack of dating knowledge or how the carbon dating works, that's not so. At least I think it's not so. He's, of course, has a freedom to show why I don't understand it. And then said, because he was angry there, he's calling me arrogant and so on. I say, hey, I wish you well. Man, you started the discussion. I can stop it anytime if I find it offensive, and I will just walk away. You can walk away anytime. If you get irritating, I will block you, stop you, close you, whatever is, or just simply stop answering. Whatever works, Okay. And just shivoham, and I stop there. So he responds, and this is the last response, by the way. And he says, hey, I'll tell you why I did not respond to him. Okay. So he says, Namaskar, sir. First, I am no match in front of you. Yeah, that's a humble thing on his part. I didn't mean in any way that he's no match to me. It was just an interesting conversation that was going on. Okay. I don't know his age, but that's irrespective of it. Age does not decide anything. Ramdas Swami has said it very well. Thora lahana buddhi pasi, sagata kalena lokansi, adi upazale tayasi thora manati. In fact, in this case, maybe very likely I'm elder to him. But this problem, this is another fallacy. Somebody who is older in age is more knowledgeable, more authoritative. No, that may be the case, but therefore, just purely based on the age of a person, if somebody's doing it, then that's atrociously nonsensical. That is a fallacy. And that is what Ramdas Swami is actually explaining. Thora lahana buddhi pasi, sagata kalena lokansi, adi upazale tayasi thora manti. But unfortunately, the majority simply thinks whoever is older is more knowledgeable, more authoritative, and so on. It falls under the authority fallacy, by the way. So he's being nice and kind here. No, he can be more knowledgeable than me. Okay, absolutely is possible. And he's not claiming that, I'm saying, but he says, I'm no match in front of you. I don't know that. I don't know him. He says, still with his limited knowledge, he's saying that I would like to name, meaning he would like to name a few on my request. And then he's referring a few history researchers. So let's get into that name. There are names. So let me just point out few. and then I'll say, okay, so I know R.C. Majumdar. I have read his books with few others. I cannot recall the names, but multiple volumes. Okay, the history. The first volume is a Vedic age. I'll show you the photo on the next slide. But let's separating the grains from the chaff. Okay, let's take this. R.S. Sharma, he's no more. Michael Witzel at Harvard University. R.S. Sharma was, I think, at the JNU, if I'm not wrong. Now he passed away. Romila Thapar, JNU, she's around. Okay, these folks, yes, I have read their works. Okay, now someone like, say, Michael Witzel may have some good. Well, that can be said to be true for R.S. Sharma, Romila Thapar. Even a wall clock that is not working, okay, the battery is gone or something, still shows the correct time twice a day. Similarly, even these people with likes of R.S. Sharma, like of Michael Witzel, like of Romila Thapar, with a very anti-India mindset, okay, very dogmatic mindset, very agenda-driven mindset, have written atrociously nonsensical stuff. But even in that, occasionally, in some context, or by mistake, or just a coincidence, do they say things that are true? Yes, that is possible. But if we have to take these researchers and use their data, use their claims, research claims, or what they state in their books as the fact, she wants to sing, sorry. You are entitled in your freedom of thinking to accept their claims for whatever reasons of your own. I consider them most disastrous, idiotic, dogmatic, foolish, wrong, false. I'm not saying this with any anger. I'm just using different words that at least some of these words stick with you. So at least you understand what I'm trying to convey. You don't have to agree with it. Okay, you have your freedom of thinking. So I wouldn't even consider take them seriously. Now, I don't know if I have highlighted others. Okay, but R.C. Majumdar I have read, and guess what? What R.C. Majumdar did was at least another side to against this idiotic nonsense that was created by these folks. But R.C. Majumdar's actual claims I can show today to be wrong. Okay, D.D. Kosambi. I have the whole collection of D.D. Kosambi. Okay, I know relatives of D.D. Kosambi on a first name basis, and we have had long discussions. My point is, D.D. Kosambi was a good mathematician, also a good statistician, also a possibly good thinker, but he was extremely biased by the leftist mindset. And unfortunately, otherwise, D.D. Kosambi could have been a great researcher. I mean, great researcher in the sense of a truthful researcher. But a certain mindset, a certain extreme bias, okay, always shadowed his research findings. So even when empirically he was getting the right information, when, remember, premise 1, premise 2, premise 3, and drawing a conclusion, he drew wrong conclusions. I'm very familiar, very thick books of D.D. Kosambi to not so thick books of D.D. Kosambi. I have them in my possession. I have read them multiple times. R.C. Majumdar, I would say maybe just once, okay? R.S. Sharma, it's so tiring, boring, and, pathetic, okay? Michael Witzel's, against the same description, but I have read Michael Witzel's works multiple times in a different context. Romila Thapar, again, extremely boring, tiring, pathetic, false, full of falsehoods, okay? But I have read them when required. I don't know who the hell is Upinder Singh. So, hey, he could be a very important person. I don't know who the hell he is, okay? And when I say I don't know who the hell he is, I'm saying, hey, I don't know. This is my ignorance that I'm referring to. No disrespect to this guy, Upinder Singh. So I'm not familiar what he has done. Altekar, yes. D. N. Jha also, let me see if I have underlined certain things. Okay, I'll come back to those names. Iravatan Mahadevan, he did a good job in terms of tapasya in collecting, somewhat documenting, sometimes interpreting the IVC seals. I'm familiar with his work. I have read his research papers, and I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, well, let's not go there. I would say his work is of a, he passed away now, I think, but his work is of a very subpar, very inferior quality. Some genuineness he has shown occasionally, but most of his work is again unfortunately shadowed by his dogma towards the Tamil culture, the Dravidian movement, and all that nonsense. Okay, so very sad. Could have been again been better. Just like somebody else I said. Who was that? Sorry, I forgot now. Oh, Didi Kosambi. Yeah, I talked about Didi Kosambi in similar light. D N Ja, I don't know who that is. Sorry, the other names I have not highlighted. So Altaker, I know. I'm trying to think of the book, but I have the book also, possibly written in 1930s, 1940s, something like this. And I don't know why Shivanshu Singh gave these specific names. Um, but let's bring it back to that 1000 BC and 2700 BC. Guess what, guys? Whether it's a Altaker, see, Aresh Sharma, Iravatan Mahadevan, Michael Witzel, Romila Thapar, they are in the Gaga land. Okay. I don't know, as I said, who this Upinder Singh is and what he has to say. But Didi Kosambe I already commented. But let's take R.C. Majumdar and Altaker. I mean, I have read their works. They refer to other people's works and saying, okay, somebody's saying 1500 BC, 1000 BC, but hey, wherever that is, now let's go further. They do not, neither Altaker nor Majumdar discusses any specific empirical evidence and how people arrived at 1000 BC or 1500 BC. So Shivansh is saying, guess what? That's exactly what I was asking you, not just about R.C. Majumdar and Altaker, but about any of this, okay? When I ask you, I'm going to take you back quickly. When I ask you this question, what is your scientific evidence for Vedic age in 1000 BCE? And let me tell you the answer. Not your meaning, not you, but even now that you're quoting these many folks, zero, zilch. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever, no ifs, no buts, that can be carbon dated, that can be done anything, that will lead to the conclusion that the Vedas were composed somewhere around 1000 BC. And hey, as you said, margins plus minus 500 years, take plus minus 2000 years. If you want, take plus minus 3000 years. I'm talking of, man, 25,000, more than 25,000 years. And looking for evidence is there in my talks. In fact, I have not even written, I have found no time to write books on that research yet. I have written some research papers in peer-reviewed conferences, peer-reviewed journals related to the antiquity. But as far as the books are concerned, I have not found time. So if you want to see the peer-reviewed, if that's because some people are just so stuck into that other nonsense, you can refer to Swadeshi Indology conference series, and at least two papers you are going to find. No, only two papers you will find, where I refer to antiquity, refer to Ramayana happening 14,000 years ago, show some evidence because it's a research paper. As opposed to books, you will find all the evidence and the blogs and my YouTube talks. Mahabharata happening more than 7,500 years ago, and Rigveda more than 25,000 years ago. That evidence is there in public domain. You have to look for it. Okay. All right. Okay. So where were we? Okay. So these all authors. Yeah. So actually, other than D.N. Jha and Upinder Singh, yes, I'm familiar with everyone. I have read their books and of some of these researchers multiple times. In fact, some of their works are such idiotic works that I would not bother critiquing them. Namely, for example, Aresh Sharma, Romila Thapar, and to an extent, Michael Witzel. Okay, let's go to the next one. Point 2. So Shivanshu Singh writes, I really respect your contribution to the dating methodology. Okay, I don't know which aspect specifically he respects. Okay, but trying to corroborate it with what I know, meaning what he knows, was just a curiosity of a general reader. Yeah, I understand that. Okay, so he saw me claiming 5561 BC for Mahabharata, 12,209 BC for Ramayana, 2nd November 5561 BC as the first day of a Kali Yuga. And what else was there? Bhishma Nirvan, but that's the same period as Mahabharata. And so, as a general reader, he had a curiosity. That's good. That's called Kutuhal. Okay, which unfortunately was not addressed. Okay, so he's thinking it's my responsibility to address it. Well, I took that responsibility. I said, therefore, he needs to read my books, watch my videos. If he had a very false understanding that I should explain this whole thing, whatever I have written in my books again, then he's in a fool's paradise. Shivanshu Singh, if you watch this video, then you are on a fool's paradise. No, that's not how real life works. Just like you have referred to these many authors, and very likely I would assume that you have read their books. I have read their books too. That's how we get our knowledge. And then, Bhagavad Gita, I may add one more book to your reading list, and assuming that you have not read it yet. And even if you have read it, there's a reason to read it multiple times for all of us, me included, is Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita talks about tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. If we are truly desirous of a knowledge, multiple requirements are there. First thing, we have to find a person who knows. If we are interested in somebody's research, approach that person like what you did. Great. And I thank you. And you should thank me for responding and interacting with you and making use of this our wonderful conversation to make points about three types of fallacies, additional learning points. This is not to put Shivanshu Singh down in any way, by the way. I mean, I admire his courage to engage me in this. But to specific point that these unfortunately was not addressed. No, he has a wrong expectations. Okay, he has very naive expectations. Okay, so no, that would be there. Then he says curiosity. That's good. Kutuhal. That is good. But you know what? If you truly want to know, even before you ask a question, Vachaspati Mishra, in a commentary to Bhagavad Gita again, Shankaracharya's Bhashya. I think Shankaracharya's Bhashya. I could be saying the wrong way. I think it's to Shankaracharya's Bhashya on Bhagavad Gita. Again, where it comes from, not important. The point is, Vachaspati Mishra says it beautifully. If you have a sangshay, a doubt, now that is the doubt Shivanshu Singh began. Like, okay, hey, so Nilesh, you are saying 5561 BC Mahabharata, but guess what? Guess what? Vedic age is only 1000 BC. So how come Mahabharata before that? And how come Mahabharata before Indus Valley civilization? I mean, why that's a problem before Indus Valley civilization, I don't know. But before Vedic age, assuming Vedic age in the sense of composition of the Vedas, then yes, that's understandable because Mahabharata refers to Vedas. Ramayana refers to Vedas. So if Mahabharata is happening 7,500 years ago, Ramayana is happening 14,000 years ago, then there is every reason to believe, to assume that Vedas happened long before that, and every reason to look for evidence, which is what I have done. I have shown the evidence. Okay. But back to this. So I was just, so curiosity is not enough. So Vachaspati Mishra says, if you have a sangshay, that sangshay must be saprayojana and sandigdha. Saprayojana, meaning you have to state the prayojan. What is the exact objection, why it is objection, and under what circumstances that objection will go away. And sandigdha, which is to say, you are coming into this middle zone of being not sure. Why is that? Maybe until Shivanshu Singh read My Dating of 5561 BC, he was saying, okay, yeah, so Indus Valley Civilization 2700 BC, then Vedic Age 1000 BC, sometime after that Ramayana, sometime after that Mahabharata. Maybe that is his idea. But then he has to state, oh, when did Mahabharata happen according to him and based on what evidence? When did Vedic age happen in 1000 BC? Or not when, 1000 BC based on what evidence? That is the first question I was asking, guys. And then he took it on another tangent. Okay. All right. So mere curiosity is not enough. It has to be saprayojana and sandigdha. Okay. Driven by a ardent desire to know something. And the question itself comes because of a deep study of the positions on the both sides. So positions of all these various historians that he is referring to, which he may know, and my position, the evidence that these guys have used, evidence that I have used. And that is what I was referring to him there. He said, if I told him, I wrote to him, to understand the contrast, he should study the evidence or look for the evidence among all these historians that he had in mind. I did not know at that time who he had in mind, but I dare say that. Why could I say that? Because I have spent sufficient time reading all the important previous research works on Indian history. Now, does that mean I have read everything and not missed any? No, I might have missed actually many. Okay, but as it happens, as I told you here, I didn't know who the DN Jha was, okay, or is. I don't know who Upinder Singh is, but other than that, I have read everyone else. And I think in the context of the Vedic age of 1000, yeah, I know how many of these folks are making that utterly illogical and stupid claim. And the likes of Majumdar and Altaker, they are not getting into any evidence. They are simply saying, okay, this is what people are saying. So they don't have a claim of their own related to the antiquity of the Vedas. Okay, all right. So yeah, so what's his name? Shivanshu saying it's requirement on his part, just mere curiosity is not enough. If he wants to have an engagement with me, by the way, and still because of time, I may not be able to do it, but in this case, I did. So to know the both positions, now still there is a samshay because he cannot discriminate, says, okay, this evidence is more stronger, more empirical, more scientific, this evidence is not. He didn't even go that far. He just called me arrogant and created another tangent. Okay, then comparison, and they say, hey, still I have a question. You have used this evidence, they have used this evidence. That contradicts. Now, how are you going to solve the problem? And that can be a very interesting discussion. Okay, now look what he does now next. He says, let me see if I have highlighted that. I think I did. Okay, yeah. And then he writes, I don't, yeah, okay. And then he writes, he says, I don't want you to address it now either. So his curiosity is over, and thank God. Okay, he does not want me to address it now. Okay, now this can come in many ways. It's like now scared, it's like what does coming. But I'm glad that he said he's not interested because I didn't have a time. I mean, I might have written a couple more responses, but then I had to stop anyways. Then he says, no hard feelings. May the force be with you. So Shivanshu Singh, there are no hard feelings. Okay. And thank you for being, what do you say, blunt and upfront. No, there are absolutely no hard feelings. May the force be with you. That is his wish to me. I would wish you the same. Okay. What pleased me a lot, Shivanshu, sorry, forgive me, Shivanshu Singh, is your greeting at the end. That's my favorite greeting. Hara Hara Mahadev. Absolutely. And that's how we have to, all of us have to work towards the Indic Renaissance. No hard feelings. No, absolutely. I mean, thank you for engaging this. And I would say this was definitely not one of the worst conversations. In fact, the fact I could make use of this conversation to talk about three fallacies is actually a great thing. So Shivanshu Singh, I like to thank you because all three I can discuss it here through our conversation. And so Shivanshu Singh also adds here, bullet number 4 here, I won't be able to stretch this conversation anymore. Thanks in advance. So yeah, because he said that he didn't want me to address this any further and didn't want to stretch conversation. Hey, If you think I have a free time, I mean, Shivanshu saying you did not think like that. I'm just saying for the benefit of others. No, I don't have a free time. I find a way to extract time with Indic Renaissance as my number one goal. Okay. In my mind, that is how I have decided to dedicate my life to the best extent possible, and I'm doing it. No, so what do you want to get out of it? Nada, nothing. This itself, Jnaneshwar says in Bhagavad Gita, is Jnaneshwari, the best commentary on Bhagavad Gita. He says it's one thing for a tree to expect fruits at its outcome, fruits as its fruits, phala as its phala. But what should the fruit expect? Fruit, its own existence is its own reward. The fruit has nothing else to look forward to. It's the same thing. This itself is a joyful exercise, and so that's why I do it to the best of my ability, best of my limited abilities. So no, I won't be responding to you here. Okay. All right, now let's get into so the last one. Now, granted, the Shivanshu Singh may have gotten busy, but this is the point, guys. Okay, it was just for the records. It was him who started with that comment. Okay, now when I responded, I did not make big comments. In fact, my comment was extremely pointed, crisp, and specific. He also gave a decent response in this way. Out of that, two fallacies came out. One is the authority fallacy, the other one is the consensus fallacy. I responded to him, again crisp, and just asking him, doesn't mean right away, whenever the time permits, to look at this and see for himself. And if he wants to discuss further, fine. That's when now the first digression, the red herring type of thing, okay, comes out. The appeal to emotion, the arrogance fallacy. He thinks what I am doing is an arrogance fallacy. I've shown this is what he's doing is an arrogance fallacy. Okay, and that I showed on the next page. But he wanted, like, as if his demand was like his questions were answered, but they were answered through the books. Like he has to do the tapasya. If he's expecting somebody like me or anyone else to give him ready answers to every question, no, that's absolutely wrong assumption. I don't know his age or I don't know what he does, but that's a very naive expectation. Wrong. Okay. All right. So again, he's getting into that red herring, bragging, arrogant, I'm bragging, and so on. And then he asked me to read books, which is great, and also know more about carbon dating. I don't assume that he knows about my background. So that's a very fair comment that he has made. Here, I quickly give an example of what is that appeal to emotion, appeal to motive, digression, red herring. This all falls under that one big category, such as hasty generalization, appeal to emotion, gaslighting, and so on. Get the other side angry, and hopefully they make mistake. Shivanshu Singh might have done it intentionally. He might have done it unknowingly, but that was the attempt nevertheless. Okay. Then there are 16 categories we need to know. And what we are discussing here is that fallacy, hetva bhasa. And because we discussed it, see, the logical fallacy is an argument that may sound convincing or true, but is flawed. So it can be wrong for two reasons or combination thereof. Okay, that is logically not sound and it's based on a false premise. Okay, or a combination. It leads to a flawed conclusion. It's not very easy to find out. So be sympathetic, okay? It's not very easy to think properly. Then we went through this. I'll not repeat, okay? So that's that. So now, so the last one I was going to say. So he started it, but maybe just a back and forth like a couple of times. And he says, I don't want you to address it now. I won't be able to stretch this conversation anymore. Thanks. Bye-bye. And yeah, absolutely, he's right. Now, in that context, what I'm quoting here is from a Nyaya Darshan. It comes under Nigrahasthana, different types of Nigrahasthana. And Nyaya Darshan discusses 20 plus. But actually, there can be many more, just like there are hundreds of fallacies. But Nigrahasthana meaning a point of defeat. Now, the person is never going to admit from his mouth that, oh, thank you for defeating me and I accept my defeat. That doesn't happen. That's why we have given the rules here. Okay. For example, if you remember the America and Iraq war, when American forces had controlled the Iraqi airport and major part of Baghdad, that Iraqi information broadcasting minister, I think, he was saying how we are in control and how we are controlling our airports and how we are controlling everything and how we have defeated American forces, something like that. People can create their alternate reality. Anyways, there are lots of things like that can happen. Nobody is going to admit. But therefore, if you know what kind of evidence to look for, what kind of signals to look for, that tells you about the nigrahasthana, the points of defeat of that person that he or she is not going to willingly admit. That's why we need judges. But these days, there are not many Nyaya experts, and there are some Nyaya experts, but I'm saying when I say there are no Nyaya experts, there are no Nyaya experts who are willing to come forward, who are truly expert in Nyaya, but willing to come forward and offer, okay, their contribution to Indic Renaissance. Not many. Okay, so this is one type of point of defeat, okay, Nigrahasthana, evasion. So I'll just read it. Karya Vyasangat Katha Vichedo Vikshepa. So he asked a question, I responded. He responded to that, I responded. He responded to that, I don't know how many times, 3 or 4 times there. And I understand. You see, remember, this is not even a live conversation. This is a conversation in the comments. So if he's a busy, he could go away. And when he has time, he can come back and write the comment. He said, no, I don't want to follow this conversation. That falls into this Nigrahasthana called evasion, vikshepa. Evasion arises if one stops an argument in the pretext of going away to attend another business. Okay, and the additional explanation is provided in Nyaya Darshana in the commentary. A certain person having commenced a disputation, remember, it was a Shivanshu Singh who started this discussion, in which he finds it impossible to establish his side, stops its further progress by saying that he has to go away on a very urgent business. He who stops the disputation in this way courts defeat and humiliation through evasion. Now, to be fair to Shivanshu Singh, but also people in general, keep this in mind that there could be genuine reasons, okay? There could be genuine reasons. One example is, somebody, you take a fight and you say, oh no, I think I'm not going to win here. Let me just stop. Let me just run away. Let me find some pretext to go away. Oh, I'm tired. Sorry, I have to go for another meeting, kind of thing. Meaning it's still an evasion, but my point is the person actually understood, I'm not going to defeat this guy. For that reason, it can happen. Others, when they see that they're being defeated, and therefore I said this comment is, although very applicable in the current situation, it's not limited to Shivanshu Singh. This has happened everywhere. I see this every time. Okay, many times I have seen this. So, but what happens is, if people are not aware that this is a Nigrahasthana, this is a point of defeat, then they say, okay, yeah, he decided not to go. So what? Yeah, so I think, so Nileshji, what is the conclusion? Well, the conclusion is he or she is defeated. Now, if it's a live conversation, then sometimes we can understand. Somebody a priori may discuss, guys, we only have 3 hours to discuss this. At the end of the 3rd hour, I need to leave for the airport. That happens. That happens with our question and answer sessions that I end up doing when I travel in India or when I travel around America or Europe. That happens. But we say, okay, I think it's a midnight now, guys, let's stop. So we may stop in the middle, even if there are more questions and more enthusiasm in the room. So that's a priori defined. But here there is no time limit, but he decided to do it. And I'm not like pointing at Shivanshu Singh. Watch, I'm making you aware of this strategy, aware of this behavior, to recognize such behavior in social media, in debates, live debates, okay, in debates on some, what you call, forums and so on and so forth, and to notice there could be genuine reasons why the person might have to leave. So be willing to account for that, but also watch carefully why the evasion may be occurring. This could be, not always, this could be a sign that the person is basically defeated, but he or she is not going to say, admit. But it doesn't need to be admitted. That's why when I encourage people to participate in debates, and they say, okay, but we need a judges. I say, where are the judges? I'm willing to be judge. I'm willing to be a judge if there are two other parties whose claims do not interfere with mine. I mean, they can be about Mahabharata dating, that's fine. As long as if the 5561 BC is not the point of debate, then I can be a judge. I'm willing to be a judge. I am qualified to be a judge. But when I have requested many, say, would you like to be a judge for a debate between, say, 5561 BC versus somebody else? Everyone just finds one excuse or another and just run away. Okay, being a judge is not easy. And my requirement, therefore, is that because you don't know about the quality of a judge, even if somebody is willing to come, I say, hey, anyone can be a judge, that's fine, as long as they are willing to have whatever they say on camera, uncut, unedited, just like the folks participating in a debate, then I'm fine. All right. I think, now we have to go through quickly the three fallacies. But before that, or just introduction to those three fallacies, let's look at this. So Shivanshu Singh mentioned, for example, R.C. Majumdar. Now, there is a series of books there, but one of the book there in that series is the first book is The Vedic Age. Okay. And there, I have read that book. I have shuffled through all the volumes in this series, the Bhavan's books series here, the history and culture of Indian people, or coming all the way to the modern times. But I picked this because he has referred to Vedic age 1000 BC. If you read what R.C. Majumdar has written, he has not shown any evidence, nor he's saying that it is from 1000 BC. He says, hey, people say that, and let's take that and let's go further and see how far we can go. Okay, so there is nothing there. Okay, now to quote any of these researchers as authorities is an authority fallacy. Now, this is not even to deny their possible expertise in this area, but even from an expert, somebody says, oh, so well, hey, the the Vedic age was 1000 BC, and says, based on what? Oh, that book. Says who? Oh, Professor or whoever, R.C. Majumdar says it. The question still will come based on what evidence is he saying it. So eventually it will go down to the pramana, not to any individual, no matter whether the authority is relevant or irrelevant. Okay, usually people will say authority should be relevant, but even then the authority fallacy comes into the picture. Okay, so for example, okay, so somebody says it's in the book. Well, I would say, well, I have written the books and my claims are in my books. Now the samshaya. Now you say which one you are going to select if they are two different. That is when what Vachaspati Mishra tells us comes into the picture. You have to study both. You should have a purpose why you are studying. What is it that you are trying to nail it down? The truth of what? That is the saprayojan. And why do you have a samshay? That is sandigdha, because you have studied both sides very well, deeply, and still you have a doubt. Still you haven't figured out on your own to decide which one of the two is a more likely claim, more validated claim, more logical claim, more scientific claim. Okay, so well, I have a book too there. I'm also authority. These things are not decided by authority. Okay, that brings us to the next point. Okay, and yeah, so if Indian civilization based on Shivanshu Singh's claims is like, say, what, 5,000 year old, 2700 BC, Indus Valley through this, I'm saying nonsense. I have shown, and not just myself, many other researchers together, that we have, I mentioned Rigveda before 25,000 years, but we don't know exactly when. But based on our itihasas, based on our Puranas, based on our all ancient Indian narratives, the evidence therein, and when that evidence is compared using the latest and greatest in the modern sciences, different disciplines of modern sciences, we have shown that we have a reason to believe a civilization in Indian subcontinent going back to more than 75,000 years. No ifs, no buts. That is that chart. It's not very easy to read. And somebody says, oh, did you put this deliberately? No, follow my work. You will come across a bigger chart that you will able to see exactly what it is said. I would encourage you to buy the India book 2023 by mind makers, okay, my MYIND. This is a centerfold there, okay, so you can make use of it. Okay, now this leads that authority fallacy actually sometimes comes out as a consensus fallacy, which is I'm thankful to Shivanshu Singh. He said that, so first is like it's in the textbooks, it's in the history books, so that's like authority fallacy because it's written by historians, or textbook meaning some way it's approved as if it is validated. No, the answer is it should be validated. It is not validated. Or the fact is that now with the additional evidence, it is shown that whatever is in the textbook is wrong. Still, the textbooks have not been changed. So whichever way you look at it, broadly speaking, it's authority fallacy. Now, the next child of that authority fallacy is a consensus fallacy, which is very beautifully described by Shivanshu Singh. Now, he didn't realize it was a fallacy. He says, look, many historians have agreed to this. Yeah, that's a consensus fallacy. Still the question, now, that's not bad that many historians came together and agreed to something. That's good. But a person like me or anyone should ask the question based on what evidence? And if you poke there, then which I have, and I've shown that it is false. The consensus fallacy, that's what a consensus fallacy is. Many historians have agreed to it. In fact, in science, there's a statement, there is a deep understanding, and everyone should understand this. If something is consensus, it's not scientific. If something is scientific, it does not need a consensus. Now, many people independently need to understand the evidence and understand why whatever that argument is made is correct. That is the way of science. Now, science can be wrong, science can be right. That's not what I'm discussing. But somebody looks at the evidence and convinces oneself why that is correct or why that is the best approximation among all the available claims. That is the method, but that is not to be confused with consensus. Many people may do the same exercise. Scientific minded people, logically minded people, people who are in search of truth, who focus on the truth and not get distracted by dogma and personal benefits and smaller pleasures of life and whatnot. So many people may agree, but based on the evidence, not just some consensus. Okay, let's agree to this. No, not that bullshit. Okay. Now, do we use consensus? Yes, we use consensus when we don't know what the truth is. When we don't have all the information, we have no way of deciding what the truth is. We say, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What should we go with? Or we use it in simple cases such as which restaurant you want to go, or which destination we should go for a vacation, and so on and so forth. Then yeah, consensus is fine, but not to be used when we have claims like these, and one claim is backed by empirical scientific evidence such as mine, and the other claims simply do not have evidence. Now, this is my assertion, guys. If you think I'm wrong, prove me otherwise. Show me the evidence that led to a decisive claim that Vedas were composed in 1000 BC or 1000 BC plus minus 500 BC. Okay, let's go further. And that brings to burden of proof fallacy. Again, my thanks to Shivanshu Singh. He brought that factor. Of course, again, he did not realize it was a fallacy, but he brought that aspect very well. He said, hey, let's go back for a second, and hopefully I don't digress. Yeah, he says, hey, I was but trying to corroborate it with what I know was just a curiosity of a general reader, which unfortunately was not addressed. That's it says. And he says something else previously. Let's see. Yeah. What one should ideally do, meaning what I should have done, according to him, is answer those queries of his with appropriate facts instead of bragging out arrogantly. Okay, so two places he makes it, and that leads us to our third fallacy that he generated, is burden of proof fallacy. He's saying, hey, all the information, previous information is there in the books, all the different historians that he mentioned. And I have come up with something new. Now, how do you define new? I mean, my work is there for more than 12 years now. Is that new? Well, in comparison to 100 years ago, yes, possibly. So that's what he's referring to. But even then, that doesn't matter. The burden of proof is on who? Okay, and so let's look at the definition. Authority fallacy, an argument from authority, also called an appeal to authority, different names, Latin names, is a form of a fallacy when the opinion of non-expert or even expert, okay, I'm adding that, on a topic is used as evidence to support an argument, or when the authorities used to say that the claim is true as authorities can be wrong, which is to say, whether a non-expert or an expert doesn't matter, because even the experts can be wrong and non-experts can be wrong, non-experts can be right. So bottom line is, expert or non-expert is not an issue. Expert has a value, but still the expert should be able to answer based on what evidence. So ultimately it goes down to evidence. So let's look at the second point here. The argument can be considered sound if the authority is an expert and when all sides of a discussion agree on the reliability of the authority in the given context. And if the argument does not rely on the authority to establish truth. See, so ultimately the truth has to be decided by pramana and not some individual or the repetition of that individual or because so and so says so. That's the authority fallacy. Again, this comes in varied forms, and as time permits, we'll go through that. Okay, so that's our first fallacy. We saw the example of that yesterday. Textbooks, historians are agreeing, okay? Or great historians, he gave me a long names, why are you not accepting what they're saying? I'm not accepting it because they have not provided evidence. They have made claims in thin air. That is a wrong way of doing history. That is a wrong way of doing science. Therefore, they are wrong. There is no question of accepting illogical, foolish, idiotic, vague claims such as theirs. Consensus fallacy, the second one. There, Shivanshu Singh mentions many historians agree. Well, so what? Therefore, I said, if something is scientific, it's not consensus. If something is decided by consensus, it is not scientific. Now, when we say science, 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 we are not trying to raise the bogey of a science. Okay, Tukarama, again, a great guru of my sampradaya, he says, Satya asatyasi mana kele gwahi nahi maniyale bahumata. That is not to say he has a disregard for society. No, that's not what it means. But he's not going to go by the consensus. He's satya satyasi, use your judgment, learn how to think properly, use logical reasoning skills, learn logical reasoning skills, tarka shastra, learn scientific acumen, vijnana buddhi, make use of these. Then go to experts. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshante jnanam jnanina tattvadarshina. How do you go? Not just randomly and says, enlighten me. Bullshit. You go because you are curious, but that's not the beginning, that's not the end. Then, therefore, you decide exactly what is the question for which you are trying to find the answer. So, prayojan. Then you find different claims into that, the prominent claims or the one that you feel stronger. And now you have objections against somebody else like me, like Shivanshu Singh had against me. He should have studied both sides, and basically that would have provided the answer in my mind. But who knows? Many people, look at my trolls. Okay, they have different degrees, MBAs, engineering degrees, PhDs, and utterly nonsensical when it comes to understanding some basic things, okay, about my research. So yeah, it can happen. Still, the person may be confused, but now at least they have a background. And then in a humble way, you have to approach if you truly want to know. Okay, that's the vidhi. There is a method to madness. By humbleness doesn't mean like somebody has to bow down and fold hands. No, that's not what humbleness is. Humbleness shows the clarity. Humbleness shows respect for other person's time. Humbleness shows through your own background study that you have done. Say, hey, I have done everything and still I have not found the answer, or I have this confusion. Therefore, I'm coming to you. Not just casual curiosity. Kutuhal. No, that everyone is curious. Yeah, tell me. No, that doesn't work like that. That's what I'm referring to. So again, back to consensus. If something is scientific, it's not consensus. If something is consensus, it's not scientific. As simple as that. But people want that. Hey, it is in the textbook. Many people agree to it. It's a common belief. Tradition says so. That's the popular notion. Majority believes in it. Masses are saying that. Everyone says that. Okay. Many people believe this. Now, what many people believe could be true, but it's possible that what many people believe could be wrong. So, Shankaracharya has said, Satyanrute dve mithuni krutya vartate lokayatra. Okay, the journey of common man or the society sort of, lives, carries out its operation with the knowledge that is a mixture of truth and falsehood. Satya anruta, Satyanrute dve mithuni krutya vartate lokayatra. And Shankaracharya is not the only one who has said this. This same statement comes with a multiple interpretations, meanings by many other individuals, but that's not the point. So consensus could be right, consensus could be wrong, but if something is been decided by consensus, that means it's not scientific. If something is scientific, then it does not need consensus. All right, the last one, burden of proof fallacy. Now here, Shivanshu Singh, again, thank you, Shivanshu, for providing opportunity for me to discuss these three fallacies. Thank you. The burden of proof. He said, hey, I came there as a curious and I was expecting answers, but you just asked me to read books or, come do the comparison and look at the evidence. And you're asking me what is the evidence. The burden of proof fallacy goes like this. What he was creating was a burden of proof fallacy. The burden of proof, shortened for blah, 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 that's fine, is the obligation on the party in a dispute to provide sufficient warrant, sufficient evidence for its position. Now, the question is, I'm also making a claim and he was also quoting somebody's claim. So who has a burden of proof? Well, if I'm claiming, I am asserting that Mahabharat war happened in 5561 BC, then it is the burden of proof is on me to provide the evidence how I arrived at 5561 BC. If I am saying that 5561 BC is the best claim and all other claims are inferior or wrong, false, which is what I am asserting, then it's my responsibility to show why 5561 BC is correct, based on evidence, based on objective testing, based on scientific acumen, based on logical reasoning, and also using all of these show why other claims are wrong. Yeah, that's my burden of proof. I mean, that's my burden to provide the proof. When two parties are in a discussion and one makes a claim, such as my claim, 5561 BC as the year of Mahabharat war, 12,209 BCE, 14,000 years ago as the time of Ramayana, that the other disputes, somebody else is asking, then it's my responsibility. The one who makes the claim typically has a burden of proof to justify or substantiate that claim. And that's what I was doing. I said, read my books, watch my videos, read my blog articles, and so on. And of course, in spite of that, if you still haven't figured it out or still you have a questions, you can approach me, and depending on our flexibility and time, I may be willing to help you. But if somebody just comes as a curious, I will not read book, I will not watch videos, I will not read blog articles, enlighten me. Bullshit, nonsense, get lost. And this is not to Shivanshu Singh. Of course, he may be included in this, but it is for everyone else. Guys, understand. And this is not just Nileshok saying it. If I have to approach somebody for a knowledge, the same rules apply. Ultimately, the person may just, even if I have done all the study and I have a question, the person may say, sorry, I don't have a time to answer your question, or I don't want to answer your question. Hey, that's still legitimate. Not very polite, not very kind, but still legitimate. But even when somebody is willing and you just go and say, enlighten me, nonsense, bullshit, get lost. That's the answer, guys. Therefore, read Bhagavad Gita. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanina sattvadarshina. But there is more. There are some intrinsic qualities that one has to have. Okay? Nahi jnanena sadrish. What is that? Sorry. Shraddhavan labate jnanam. Okay? Without Shraddha, you are not going to get knowledge. Okay? Or what I was looking for is see, suddenly I'm going to go blank. That happens with the age. But it's a perfect balancing of that tadvidi balancing to this tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam. Okay, so basically saying nase jnana nase shraddha samshayi nasalapura. You have no reverence, no trust for a person to whom you are asking. If you don't have a trust, why bother asking that person? Now, once the person answers, you can still question it, even if you have a trust. But the question would be like this, but hold on, now you said this, and thank you very much. But isn't it the case, blah, blah, blah? You may go into it. So it's perfectly fine to ask. But if you don't have that initial reverence, and not initial, afterwards also you need it, that this person is truly, genuinely interested in knowing the truth, himself or herself. If you don't have that, why bother? Unless you have some ulterior objectives of your own, why would you go to that person if the person is not truthful? So therefore you should need shraddha. Okay, nase jnana nase shraddha. So you also have to need a knowledge, basic background knowledge, which goes back to saprayojan and sandigdha, that you have done your homework before coming to that person. And samshay, and even when the person answers, okay, even when the person shows, and again, why that can happen, many reasons. The person shows the evidence, person shows how it was objectively tested, how we draw the conclusion, what is the logic used. He says, no, I am not still convinced. Okay, that's possible. But that could be because maybe the person did not explain, but it's also very likely that the person who is receiving it does not have a comprehension skills that are required, which means the person has to improve one's own skill set. Okay, so that's what this gets into. So now for 5561 BC, the burden of proof is on me. Similarly, remember, it is Shivanshu Singh who has started this discussion and saying that, look, Indus Valley civilization 2700 BC, Vedic age in 1000 BC, and you are claiming Mahabharata before that. How come? And I asked, what is your evidence for Vedic age in 1000 BCE? And he says, hey, I came with a question. You should have answered me. No. I'm trying to help you answer your question. But if you answer that question, how you arrived at Vedic age 1000 BCE, if Shivanshu Singh had done that, then he would have realized, assuming he has the skills, he would have realized that there is absolutely no evidence, no basis to claim Vedic age in 1000 BCE. The range of Indus Valley civilization is from 7000 BC to 1800 BC. So Mahabharata war 5561 BC is not before Indus Valley civilization time frame. And it's also not before Vedic age, because Vedic age in 1000 BC is also a false claim. That's why I asked that question to him and saying, hey, you are claiming something that is false, but in a polite way, I'm saying, what is your evidence? Instead of understanding the opportunity that was offered to him, he started calling me arrogant and bragging. Now, this is not limited to Shivanshu Singh. This happens all the time, guys. And this provided a wonderful opportunity to discuss these three fallacies. By the way, this is also, so in this case, for 1000 BC or 2700 BC, when asked, if I would have said, okay, no, that's great. Now let me explain, which means I have accepted his position, but I did not, because it's false. I know that it is false. I have done my homework. He has not done his. Therefore, immediately he went into the red herring, called me arrogant, called me bragging, instead of just answering the question. Which way he answered the question? Did he show the evidence? No. He said he went into other fallacy. What fallacy he ran into? First, he ran into authority fallacy. Then he ran into consensus fallacy. Then he ran into burden of proof fallacies. He says, I asked you a question, you should have provided me the evidence. He missed the point. Yes, I should have provided him the evidence for 5561 BC. I said, go read my books. I mean, he has come to my page. Now, he may not know about the books, but therefore I said, I have written books. Go read them. Watch my videos. Now, the burden of proof for 1000 BC as a Vedic age or 2700 BC as the Indus Valley civilization is on him, not me. This is also stated by the way in Hitchens razor, in a different way it applies here, which declares that what may be asserted without evidence may be dismissed without evidence. And let me repeat, there is no evidence Shivanshu Singh did not provide, but whether he provided or not, because if he would have gone look for it, he wouldn't have found any. There is no evidence, any evidence whatsoever, empirical evidence, scientific evidence, logical evidence that can show that Vedas were composed in 1000 BC. Out. Indus Valley civilization, yes, definitely it existed in 2700 BC, but important point, it also existed 1000 years after, and it also existed at least 4000 years before. So the very claim that he was making, that Mahabharat war date that I'm asserting 5561 BC is before Indus Valley civilization, is simply not correct. And before Vedic age is also not correct, because his claim of Vedic age is 1000 BC is wrong. But instead of having that discussion, evidence-based discussion, guess what? He jumped into first the authority fallacy, then the consensus fallacy, and then finally the burden of proof fallacy. All right, quick summary. So before, in the part 1, we have discussed cherry picking and absolutism fallacy. In part 2, we discussed strawman and red herring fallacy. And in this part, we discussed authority, consensus, and burden of proof fallacies. So total of 3 plus 2, 5 plus 2, 7 fallacies so far. Okay. Alrighty. So let me see. So stop sharing, and I'll see you soon in part 4 or videos on other different aspects of ancient Indian civilization. Namaskar.